All right, welcome into Gridiron Icon. We are in between some really fun interviews coming up with some future Hall of Famers, some current Hall of Famers, and some Pro Bowlers. But this week, I am flying solo, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the 2022 NFL Draft, which just ended a week ago. And I got to tell you, it was not without some storylines, which I'm sure is of shock to no one. The NFL draft is one of those things that I look forward to every year. If my team, the Los Angeles Rams, or should I say the world champion Los Angeles Rams, are not in the Super Bowl or winning it, I think my next favorite event of the year is the NFL draft. I think it has such great storylines. I think it gives us a lot as football fans, franchise by franchise. I think it gives us a lot of hope. And it's almost like hitting the reset button for every franchise. And I thought some of the franchises that are traditionally in the cellar really stole this draft. I thought they did a fantastic job, and that doesn't always happen. We've seen some of the cellar dwellers make some really suspect picks that, of course, come back to bite them in the rear end not far down the line. And I have to say, I think we saw a little bit of that in this draft, starting with the first pick. Very organic, clearing my voice on a podcast. With that said, let's take a look at who we thought won the draft, who we thought really improved their team and should give their fan base a lot of hope going into the 2022 season, and those that left me scratching my head like, what did I just watch? Why? Why? So we're going to talk a little bit about that here this week on Gridiron Icon as we line up some fantastic interviews. If you haven't seen our last couple, please go back and watch, like, and subscribe. You will see some fun stuff with some of the greatest football players in the past. So let's take a look at that 2022 draft and who we thought were some of the winners and some of the losers. I want to start right off the bat with the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's interesting. I guess the best I can say, they own the first pick in the draft for the second year in the row. Last year, they went after Trevor Lawrence, who really underachieved under Urban Meyer. So let's cut him a little bit of slack. I am suspect or skeptical on Trevor at the NFL level. I've been pretty open in that in many cases I compare him to a Jeff George, somebody with a ton of talent, but never really realizes that talent at the next level. But let's give him a little bit of a break. He had to play under what was like a reality show. It was ridiculous last year under Urban Meyer. I'm not sure they really had a lot of pieces around him in both on the offensive line and at the skill position players. He lost the next pick in Travis Etienne. He had really a subpar group for a rookie at some of the skill positions. And I think that they went out and did some interesting things in Jacksonville. So I'm going to start there. Let's just start with the first pick of Trayvon Walker. I don't get it. I don't get it. I'm not saying that Trayvon Walker isn't a talented ball player or that he shouldn't have been a higher draft pick. I think late first round, second round is where this armchair quarterback had him going in this draft. For him to literally leapfrog the field and be the number one pick, I think is ridiculous. I think it was a terrible pick that high. If I'm a Jaguar fan or somebody that follows the Jacksonville Jaguars, I would have loved to seen the Jags working the phones to trade out of that spot and pick up more choices later in the draft and later rounds, including the first round. There were several teams in the Saints and the Eagles that had multiple picks. Probably didn't want to give up that much to go up to number one in a really not a strong quarterback draft. But if you're a Jags fan, you've really got to build the talent around Trevor Lawrence moving forward. The Trayvon Walker pick there at number one is really, really puzzling to me. I don't get it. I don't see how he possibly could have leapfrog Aiden Hutchinson, who went one pick later to the Detroit Lions. It's a suspect pick, and I think that pick will live in infamy. However, with that said, I really do like what they did later on with the linebacker from Utah and Montana and Muma. They got a couple of really nice plug and play linebackers for that defense to team with Trayvon Walker at the number one pick. But I'm just going to come out and say it. I feel like that number one pick there of Trayvon Walker was suspect. I don't think it was the best choice. I think they should have taken Aiden Hutchinson. I think they maybe should have even considered Kayvon Thibodeau, who went just a few picks later to the New York Giants. I just don't think Trayvon Walker is worthy of the first pick. He's not a franchise player, a game changer. And I think that this pick is going to live in infamy in Jacksonville history because some of the players that came after Trayvon Walker, even on his own team, college team, the Georgia Bulldogs, which was an all-time defense, I think would have almost been better choices there than Trayvon Walker. I think he benefited as a talented player, but he benefited from a lot of the talent around him. So Jags fans, what say you? I did not like the pick, and I thought they should have gone a different direction. So Jacksonville, going to be interesting next couple of years. Going to be real interesting to see what shakes out in Jacksonville under Doug Peterson if he can't get Trevor Lawrence up to the talent level that really reflects being chosen number one in the draft. And I know I could hear people screaming at me right now, using Baker Mayfield as a reference point as the number one quarterback who hasn't quite lived up to that pick yet at the NFL level. All right, let's move along quickly to some of the teams that I liked, that I thought had a fantastic draft this year. And I want to start with my choice, and I thought it was an A across the board for them, and that is the Kansas City Chiefs. I thought the Chiefs did a remarkable job of improving their team. They needed help on defense. We've seen it the last 2 years in the playoffs. The Chiefs are known for offense. They're explosive. We just saw what was one of the best football games of the season in the playoffs when the Chiefs went head to head with Josh Allen and the Buffalo Bills. I mean, my God, was that a good football game? Just loaded with talent on both sides, on both teams, rather, on both sides of the ball. But look, the Chiefs needed defense. They went out with the 21st pick in the first round and drafted Trent McDuffie, the star quarterback from the University of Washington, the Husky. They went out just a few picks later in the first round at number 30 and drafted George Karlaftis, the star defensive end from Purdue. They got an edge rusher. They got a guy to protect the edge against the star wide receivers that the Chiefs are going to face a boatload of in 2022 in the AFC West. And I thought that was significant. But then they follow it up in the second round, which I thought was one of the steals of the draft. At number 54, they chose Sky Moore, the wide receiver out of Western Michigan, who is blazing fast. Not difficult to see that they were replacing the speed that left the building with Cheetah, Tyreek Hill, when they let him run off to the Miami Dolphins. Sky Moore, plug and play with a McCole Hardman, with that wide receiver group. And I just think that the Chiefs hit a home run on this draft, particularly in those first three picks. They went deep. They've gone deep into the playoffs the last 2 years and then just ran into teams that were hotter. It still can't even wrap my head around the Cincinnati Bengal game that got those Bengals into the Super Bowl where they lost to my world champion Los Angeles Rams. Nonetheless, folks, Kansas City Chiefs, unbelievable. I thought you had a great draft. If these guys live up to the talent they showed on film and in their college careers, I think that the Chiefs are going to continue to be a real player in the AFC. And let's call it like we see it. The AFC is absolutely loaded, particularly the West, with the Broncos picking up Russell Wilson, and that wide receiver room in Denver is ridiculous. You've got the Raiders with Devontae Adams teaming up with his college teammate Derek Carr in Las Vegas. Then, of course, you've got the Chargers. It's literally unreal. Best division in football, which isn't easy for me to see as an NFC West guy. But Kansas City, A. You get an A from this host. I thought you did a fantastic job of improving your team. Okay, I want to move on to another team that I thought hit it out of the ballpark, so to speak. And they seem to do this every year. This is one of those franchises that you look at and they do such a fantastic job. Their scouting department is unbelievable. It's so good. And they did it again this year. And that team is the Baltimore Ravens. What an incredible draft these guys had. Just clipping down on some of their picks. In the first round, a player that slid that most people thought was going to be a top 5 pick was the safety from Notre Dame, Kyle Hamilton. They got him at 14, and they needed a safety. They needed help in the defensive backfield, as stated just moments ago, which seems to be a theme with every team in the AFC because the AFC is loaded at wide receiver and with high-flying offenses. Ravens went out and got a guy that many people thought was the best safety in the draft. He's long, he's 6'4", he's a playmaker. They stole him at 14. They come right back at 25 and they grab what many scouts felt was the best center in the draft in Tyler Linderbaum, the center from Iowa, a guy that's a plug-and-play offensive lineman. If you hear the GM speak in Baltimore, they are constantly asking Lamar Jackson, look, what can we do for you? Where do you need help? Who do you want to draft? And they just came out even this morning at the time of this taping and said that Lamar consistently tells them offensive line, offensive line, offensive line. And the Ravens were listening. They listened to their quarterback. Remarkable, because we're going to talk about a team that doesn't seem to here in a minute. The Baltimore Ravens then, following the top safety, the top center, they go out and get a guy that was injured during the combine, David Ojabo, who many felt, again, was a top 10 edge rusher prior to the injury. They get him in the second round at pick 45. He's got time to rehab, to get healthy, and then look out. They may have gotten a steal. He was one of the best edge rushers in this draft, and they stole him in the second round at number 45. They go out in the third round and get a defensive tackle to shore up the line, Travis Jones, the DT from University of Connecticut. But then they come back in the fourth and get a couple of what I felt were steals. The offensive tackle from Minnesota, David Falalil, I know I'm probably not pronouncing that right, one of the best tackles in the draft. They get one of the best corners in Jalen Armour Davis, the corner from Alabama. They follow that up with a couple of tight ends in round 4 and another corner, Demarion Williams out of Houston, and then finish out the draft at number 6 with Tyler Beatty, the running back from Missouri. So they literally go out. They nailed day 1. They come in with an impressive day 2. And you just look at this and you think, wow, the Ravens scouting department gets the most out of their draft almost every year. And they nailed it again this year. Ajabo was projected, to be a top 15 pick before he tore his Achilles. And by choosing him in Baltimore, this reunites him with former Michigan defensive coordinator Mike McDonald and his high school teammate Odafe Owe. So a lot of storylines out of Baltimore, but I thought that they had an A-plus draft in a division that seems like is there for the taking for them with some of the changes. They've got some tough road ahead with some of the up-and-comers in the AFC, but the Ravens should be making noise again. I will say this, it was very interesting for the Ravens to trade away Hollywood Brown to the Arizona Cardinals in this draft. There was a lot of controversy there on Twitter. I imagine that. There's controversy on Twitter? No way. With Lamar Jackson tweeting WTF, even though it came out later that Hollywood Brown and stated, look, Lamar knew that this was coming. There was talk in the building. Hollywood wanted to go reunite with Kyler Murray in Arizona, his college teammate. So, which seems to be good timing in Arizona, considering DeAndre Hopkins has just been hit with a 6-game suspension. Not an accident, Nonetheless, the Ravens were able to move Hollywood Brown and get something for him, much to the dismay of his buddy Lamar Jackson. Nonetheless, the Ravens, I felt, really improved. And there's this constant argument around the Ravens that why don't they, what did they hate wide receivers? What's their deal? Look, folks, if you watch that offense, their offense is not a high flying, receiver friendly offense. That's why you're not seeing the Devontae Adams. You're not seeing the Robert Woods. You're not seeing the A.J. Brown who got traded to Philadelphia. You're not seeing these guys clamoring to get to Baltimore. That offense is built around Lamar Jackson, a strong running game, and playing good defense. So, interesting draft for the Ravens. I gave it an A. My final pick as one of the top drafts this year is the New York Jets. Man, I loved their draft. They absolutely killed it on a team that is void of talent. I mean, they need help just about everywhere, but they were able to address specific needs on both sides of the ball. I thought that they had a well mapped out, well planned strategy from day one. Nothing but A pluses to the New York Jets front office and their scouting team. They come in at number 4 with Ahmad Gardner, the corner from Cincinnati, who many felt was the top corner in the draft, despite the fact that the Texans at number 3 chose Derek Stingley Jr. out of LSU. Sauce Gardner at number 4 is an absolute steal. You saw the reaction, or hopefully you saw the reaction of Robert Saleh in the draft, in the war room, when they made the choice. Sauce Gardner is going to be a star in New York. But then they come back just a few picks later at number 10 and grab what many felt was the best wide receiver in the draft to team with Zach Wilson in that offense in Garrett Wilson, the wide receiver out of Ohio State. They then come back at number 26 in the first round and grab what many felt was one of the top edge rushers, top 3 or 4 edge rushers in Jermaine Johnson out of Florida State. I mean, what a stellar boom, 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 3 picks by the New York Jets. But they weren't done. In the second round at pick 36, they get what many believed was the top running back in this draft. At pick 36, they grab Breece Hall, the running back out of Iowa State, to team with Michael Carter, who they got out of North Carolina last year. And suddenly, the New York Jets have a very strong, young running back room to help Zach Wilson out and that offensive line that they really went heavy on in the last 2 drafts. Very smart drafting going on, in my opinion, in New York. They come back right away in the 3rd round and grab another really nice player and complement for the offense in Jeremy Ruckert, the tight end out of Ohio State. The Jets just hit it out of the park. Those 3 teams, in my opinion, Kansas City, New York, and Baltimore, just nailed their drafts. And as we all know, this is on paper, so it's going to take a couple of years to see if any of these grades are right. But really nice look by those 3 franchises to come out strong in this NFL draft. I do want to mention, in my opinion, what I thought is we'll go honorable mention category here. And I do want to say that I thought the Houston Texans did a really nice job. The Texans, look, that franchise has had a black cloud hovering over that thing with this Deshaun Watson thing, with coaching changes, with crazy draft picks, with Laramie Tunsil. And I mean, they needed something to go their way. They needed a new set of leaders, a new set of leadership there. I thought they did a really nice job as an honorable mention to improve their team. They were getting better as the season ended last year. Lovie Smith is a guy that players rally around, defensive minded. They go out in the first round at pick 3 and a bit of a surprise and grab Derek Stingley Jr., the corner out of LSU. They come back and shore up the line of scrimmage with Kenyon Green, the nastiest and, in my opinion, the best guard in this draft from Texas A&M. And then they get some guys that I think are going to be good ball players in the NFL. Jalen Petrie, the safety from Baylor. John Mechie III, the wide receiver from Alabama, opposite Jamison Williams. And then I thought a bit of a steal in the 3rd round at Christian Harris, the linebacker out of Alabama. And in the 4th, Dameon Pierce, running back out of Florida, who was just a bowling ball. Just one of those guys that just bounced off and ran people over at Florida. So really nice draft. Honorable mention to the Houston Texans, and they could use a little love, a little positivity moving forward with that franchise. Now that the Deshaun Watson situation is the Cleveland Browns problem, and they could start fresh under Davis Mills and start to build a football team down there under Lovie Smith. So kudos to the Houston Texans. All right. No draft grade show or analysis is complete without talking about the teams that you just think absolutely bombed this draft. And like anything, this is on paper, okay? It's going to take 2-3 seasons before anybody can actually give true analysis on an NFL draft. These players need to develop at the next level. But I thought two teams that just did a really, really poor job in this draft and just had me thinking, what the hell did I just watch? These two teams just stood out to me. The first one, who I thought by far had one of the worst drafts in 2022, was the Green Bay Packers. Can somebody explain to me what is going on in Green Bay? Look, I'm willing to be wrong, but the Green Bay Packers are an iconic franchise. They're not a big free agency destination. Look, young guys aren't clamoring to get to Wisconsin and play in the frigid, frozen tundra of Lambeau Field. Aside from the history and the romance around it, it's a tougher place to play. It's not Los Angeles. It's not Miami. It's not Seattle. It's not places along coastlines with great nightlife. So the draft for the Green Bay Packers becomes absolutely critical year in and year out. It is critical to build talent through the draft on rookie contracts in Green Bay. They have come out in the last 2 to 3 seasons and just laid an egg, man. I do not get it. This draft is a perfect example. Aaron Rodgers, who's one of the most talented quarterbacks to ever play this game, 3-time MVP, generational, still at the top of his game in his late 30s, just won the MVP again, has gotten the team to 13 wins twice in a year, only to crap the bed in the playoffs the last 2 years, even at home in Green Bay, is still on the roster. And he's still there despite the fact that Davante Adams has moved on to Las Vegas, that some of the other complimentary receivers have moved on to other teams, that the running back room is solid, not spectacular, with Aaron Jones and the kid from Boston College. And yet the Green Bay Packers consistently come out over the last 2 years, and they make the most head-scratching, I should say, draft picks you've ever seen. In this draft, with a plethora of wide receiver talent sitting on the board, the Packers decide at number 22 to pick Key Walker, the linebacker from Georgia, granted on an all-time Georgia defense, an all-time college football defense. But people, Aaron Rodgers, 13 wins, 2 seasons in a row with Davante Adams. He is now gone. And the Packers come out with their first 2 picks at 22 and 28 and pick defense. Key Walker, linebacker, Georgia. I think that's a very, very marginal pick. I thought Nakobe Dean, his teammate, would actually be a better player and will be a better player in the NFL. A very nice pick, a good one at 28 with Devontae Wyatt, the massive defensive tackle from Georgia, which I think is solid, and becomes an even better pick if at 22, 6 picks earlier, you get Aaron Rodgers, a wide receiver, or you get him the best tight end in the draft. You do something at the skill position piece to complement one of the greatest quarterbacks to ever play this game in his late 30s, who's gotten you on the doorstep twice. The Packers go, maybe not. Let's go defense. Let's get a linebacker that I think is highly overdrafted in Key Walker, Devontae Wyatt, which is a very nice pick. Again, only becomes really nice if you've already addressed the skill position on offense. They come back in the second round and get a player that I think is a typical climbs the boards late in the game, type player based on the combine. In Christian Watson, they finally get the wide receiver for Aaron Rodgers out of North Dakota State. They grab Christian Watson, who's a speedy wide receiver. But folks, I'm just going to say it. If you watch the film, nice player. Not he's going to fit right into that stable of complementary wide receivers. Maybe plays in the slot. Is he a number one? Can he possibly replace Devontae Adams? Let's just say it right now. No. But that's the best they do for Aaron. They grab Christian Watson in the second round at pick 34. They come back in the third round and grab Sean Ryan, the guard from UCLA. They're shoring up the offensive line. Clearly, LaFleur wants to run the ball. In the fourth round at 140, they pick a tackle out of Wake Forest. They get another tackle in the seventh round, Rasheed Walker out of Penn State. So they're building along that offensive line. I will say a dark horse pick that I think may turn out to be real nice. But again, it fits in that complementary wide receiver role, is their fourth pick at number 132, Romeo Doubs, the wide receiver out of Nevada. But to me, Romeo and Christian, the two wide receivers they grab for Rodgers in this, are going to be, I guess the best word is a bit of a project. I think that they're going to take time. They're certainly not going to be plug and play replacements for Devontae Adams. No way. So it looks like Aaron Rodgers will be leaning on Randall Cobb, his buddy, and some rookies to get back to that, 13 win mark and back into the deep playoff hunt against teams that like the world champion Los Angeles Rams and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and maybe the Dallas Cowboys, some teams that have, the Eagles look good in this draft, some teams that have improved in the NFC. But I am just going to say it. The Green Bay Packers are just head scratchers, man. They are heads to have your franchise quarterback, something that most teams would kill for, to have him sitting there for several seasons now, whether you love or hate Aaron personally, that's another show. But to not go out and get him the type of skill position players that greatly complement one of the greats of all time is just, look, I don't even want to hear the excuses. I think it's just mind-numbing. It's absolutely surprising in a draft that is just deep in wide receivers. Deep. The Packers made no move to go out and get, in my opinion, a guy that's going to be a number one. It just isn't there. So I expect to see early predictions here, folks. I expect to see a visibly frustrated Aaron Rodgers in 2022. And certainly any kind of injury to even any of these young guys is lights out. For them to not in free agency or the draft address, the wide receiver position, tight end position, some kind of skill set is mind-blowing to me. Just mind-blowing. I mean, granted, Tyreek Hill wanted to go to Miami, where he's from. He wanted to play in the sun, but they weren't even in the sweepstakes. There's some players sitting out there now in Jarvis Landry and AJ Green. You got to believe that they're going to try to bring in for Aaron Rodgers. But folks, while still good, solid, former Pro Bowl players, they're probably at the tail end of their career. So again, I don't get it, Green Bay. Packer fans, would love to hear from you about how you feel about this draft. I thought it was a bust. Absolutely love Devontae Wyatt, and as a dark horse, love Romeo Doubs, the wide receiver out of Nevada. Otherwise, I'm scratching my head for Aaron Rodgers once again. This is the third or fourth draft in a row. Don't get it. Okay. My final dud in this draft is one that actually surprises me because I think it's one of the most iconic franchises in the NFL, maybe in all of sports, and that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Don't get it. I'm just going to say it right now. It's probably going to catch some heat for it from Steeler fans, but I don't understand this draft by them at all. It just feels too cute to me. At number 20, they pick who some people felt, I guess I'm kind of a mixed bag on this, the best quarterback in the draft, and that was Kenny Pickett, the hometown kid out of University of Pittsburgh. I have watched Pickett. I watched a lot of his film, and he did some nice things in college in one season, essentially one season's worth. Um, to me, when I watch Kenny Pickett, I see Blaine Gabbert. I don't see a guy that's replacing Big Ben. I don't see a guy that I think could even beat out Mitch Trubisky to start the season, or even maybe a Mason Rudolph in Pittsburgh. I think that's very debatable, but clearly when you're drafting him with the 20th pick in the draft, you're seeing this kid as a franchise quarterback moving forward. Folks, I don't see it. I don't see it at all. I see Blaine Gabbert. I see a career backup, a Matt Schaub, somebody who can, play some games in a pinch, but he's not a franchise changer. He's certainly not the guy to lead the franchise to multiple Super Bowls. I did like the pick at number 52 in the second round for Pittsburgh of George Pickens, the wide receiver out of Georgia. Again, Green Bay. Green Bay, what were you thinking with these receivers? It's bizarre. The Steelers steal him at 52. I think he's a very talented guy that will fit into a really, fairly talented, mercurial, and sometimes dramatic wide receiver room in Pittsburgh with Chase Claypool and the like. But I think Pickens can make his mark. I think he's going to be a solid wide receiver in the NFL, may even move into that star status if he can stay healthy after the injury there at Georgia in college. Man, I'll tell you one thing in this NFL draft. Were the Georgia Bulldogs loaded or what? I mean, what a talented recruiting class and college champion they are. Unbelievable talent on both sides of the ball. Back to the Steelers, to Marvin Leal, the defensive end out of Texas A&M. I did think the Calvin Austin, the third wide receiver out of Memphis, was an interesting pick in terms of pure speed. And then they come back even in the seventh round and grab the quarterback from South Dakota State. The Dakotas are getting some love these last two drafts. They're really getting a lot of love on those scouts that are in deep into the Dakotas. They must be screaming loud in these draft war rooms because they're making a mark the last couple of years. But they grabbed the quarterback Chris Olodokun from South Dakota State. So they grabbed two quarterbacks in Pittsburgh, with a couple on the roster, and then of course the tragically painful loss of Dwayne Haskins, which is bigger than football. So the quarterback room is very interesting in Pittsburgh. But folks, I'm going to say it. I just didn't think the Steelers had a great draft. I love the George Pickens choice at number 2. I thought that was their best pick in this draft. I think Kenny Pickett will be a career backup. He may start some games over a small period in Pittsburgh, but I don't see it. I just don't see it unless they go to a really strong running game centric offense there in Pittsburgh. So those are my grades. Quick show this week from the 2022 NFL draft. There was some great storylines in this thing. Of course, Malik Willis slipping to the Tennessee Titans in the third round. I have to be very candid. I did not like any of the quarterbacks in this draft. I just didn't see any of them as game changers or franchise builders. I thought some of them had some nice stuff. Desmond Ridder to the Falcons could be interesting based on opportunity, although I'm personally rooting for Mariota to resurrect his career there in Atlanta. Overall, I just didn't, Sam Howell went late to the Washington Commanders. I don't see any of these quarterbacks making a massive impact in the NFL. Just my take. I'd love to hear from you, whether it's on YouTube or on Twitter. We would love to hear your opinion as well. I will say I wanted to, as we close the show, give you what was my favorite pick of this draft, and favorite just because I thought this kid was highly underrated, and I really love the fit. I thought it was just a boom, plug and play on a team that's very close to being in a Super Bowl. And my favorite pick of this entire draft was Kaiir Elam, the cornerback from Florida, who the Buffalo Bills chose in the first round at number 23. You lock that kid in opposite Tre'Davious White and look out. The Buffalo Bills, minus a coin flip in overtime, very easily could have been playing in the Super Bowl against my world champion Los Angeles Rams. Of course, I would have predicted they'd lose. Nonetheless, the Bills, I think, are just a couple of really nice pieces and a couple balls bouncing their way from being the Super Bowl AFC representative. And I loved this pick. If you watch Kyer Elam play at Florida, he's tough, he's long, he's got a couple of things to clean up, but he's just one of those guys when you watch him on film, he just pops. And you think there is a talented player with Stingley and Sauce Gardner going very early. I just thought this was a fairly, I don't know about deep, at the top half of this draft, there were some really nice choices at corner. And I feel like Elam got overlooked. I think that he is going to be a really good, I think he will be a Pro Bowl player up there for the Buffalo Bills. So what say you, Bills Mafia? Very nice choice. Great pick at number 23 in the first round for Buffalo. And I do expect, and I reserve the right to change this, of course, any given moment. I do expect the Bills to be making a lot of noise in terms of Super Bowl next year. So great pick by Buffalo. That was my favorite pick of this draft. Thanks for joining me on this episode. I wanted to review the draft really quick in between some fantastic interviews we have got lined up. I think Rams fans, Seahawks fans, some other folks will love, some of our even Cowboy fans. Some things coming up that we're really excited about here on Gridiron Icon. But there's our draft grades. And of course, it's way too early. It's way too early. Feel free to say this and quote me on it. It's going to take 2 or 3 years to find out if any of these guys pan out to be the kind of players their teams and franchises hope. But as fans, we love to grade. Those are my grades. So thanks for joining me this week on Gridiron Icon. We will be back next week, hopefully with an interview. We're chasing something special. Tune in. We appreciate you liking and subscribing on YouTube. You can find us on Spotify, Apple iTunes, Stitcher, Google. Listen in as we interview some of the Gridiron greats from the past and the present, including coaches, fans, media, you name it. Thanks for joining us this week on Gridiron Icon, and we will see you next week.